Good morning, students. Today we are going to learn about the site selection of an airport as per ICAO. ICAO stands for International Civil Aviation Organization. We have to Today we are going to learn what are the factors that should be taken into account before uh, construction of an airport. What are the factors that should be kept in mind? Now, before understanding about the factors, we have to what we need to do is that we have to collect datas um, of different items. So let us see what are the data required before the selection of a site. So, so you see here the first one, peak hourly volume. So peak hourly volume, the first thing. So what is peak hourly volume of air traffic to be handled? Peak hourly volume, you have already learned in traffic engineering. What is peak hourly volume? So let me say just, for example, let me say that a 30th highest hourly volume. What is 30th highest hourly volume? It means that traffic will exceed 29 times in a year than the design traffic volume. Understood? So when I say 38 highest hourly volume, that means traffic will exceed how many times? 29 times than the design traffic volume. So we have to understand, we have to know, or we have to collect data what is the maximum hourly volume of the traffic. Next point, you see, after the peak hourly volume, uh, the present and future types of aircraft which may use the aircraft. So for example, there is an airport uh, which is not available for international flights, so only domestic flights are the airport is open only for domestic flights. But in the future, when development takes place, then it may so happen that the requirement will be such that it will have to be open for international flights also. So you have to take precaution beforehand, or you have to make arrangements such that you think about the future also, right? So besides this, their characteristics, namely size, turning radius, encircling radius, weight, wheel configuration, etc., should also have to be studied. Let us see the next one. Facilities to be provided for the passengers, and then baggage and cargo, and for handling and takeoff and servicing of aircrafts should also be determined, whether these facilities uh, are there or not. So these data, whether these facilities will be available or not, or whether this kind of facilities can be provided or not. So we have to take care of these factors. That means this data we have to find out before going for the selection of aircraft. All right, let us go for the factors now. The first factor is regional plan. So the site selected should fit into the regional plan, thereby forming it an integral part of the national network of airport. So the site that you select, it should fit inside the regional plan also. Okay, then let us go to the next one. Airport use. The airport site is also decided by the use of airport. Now airport can be open for civil purpose or for military purpose. In case of emergency like war, the civil airport are taken over by the military. So you see, so the airports which are constructed for civil purpose, or I mean for domestic travel from one place to another, the passengers that are used, or transportation of goods or transportation of people, that are called civil airports. Now it may so happen that in the near future, we never know what may happen. So the authorities may decide that this civil airport near the border of a country, it has to be converted into a military base or a military point. So in times of war, uh, where the possibility attacks are there, the possible air attacks are there, so that air base or that airport will be converted into a military base or military point, for where the air attacks can be started or taken care of. It is therefore necessary to see that the airport grants natural protection from possible air attacks during war. Let's go to the next one. So the number two is what we understand that such arrangement has to be made beforehand that civil airports should be converted, it can be converted into military purpose also if required. Then let us go to the next one, proximity of other airports. Now you see, uh, one airport is there in one place and the next airport is not very far. Then what happens? Then there will be congestion of airport, traffic congestion will be there. So sufficient distances has to be there between two nearby airports. Let us see this one. The airport should be located at sufficient distance apart. This is necessary to prevent the aircrafts which are maneuvering for landing at one airport from interfering with the movements of aircrafts at another airport. So there has to be, both two airports should be sufficient at sufficient distances apart. What if it is not, if this precaution is not taken? If this precaution is not taken, there will be severe air traffic congestion due to limited airspace, and it will result in reduction of airport capacity. All right, so you see, airports, two flights are operating at the same time, nearby airports, two flights are taking off at the same time, then there is always a chance that one may collide with the other. It does not happen generally, because the people are there in the control tower, they will look after the traffic congestion, but it will create unnecessary delay. All right, so we'll have to take care that the two airports are not very nearby. Let us go for the next one, ground accessibility. So what do you mean by this ground accessibility? Let us see. The location of airports should be such that it results in shortest ground access time. That means what? Say for my house is in Hattigaon, and the nearby airport is in Azra. All right. So so let us say during Durga Puja, that obviously, there will be more traffic, and from Hattigaon, from my place to reach Azra, say during traffic it takes more than 3 hours in traffic. Okay, and where I have to go from Azra, I want to go from Azra to Silchar, and Silchar, how much it takes? So let us say it will take maximum half an hour, 1.5 hour, or maximum 2 hours. So you see, the time required for me to go from my house to the airport is more than the time required from more than the time required for traveling from one airport to the other. So this should not be happen. So ground accessibility should also be there. Okay, so it should also be such that the the transportation is there from my house. So for example, my house is located in the interior place and I don't have vehicle, my own vehicle. I have to walk some certain distance from my own house to reach the nearby highway. Then it will cause a lot of problem. Okay, so it's the location of airport should be such that it is easier for the people to go from house, their own house, to the airport, nearby airport, and then the time required for moving from one airport to other. Let us go for the next one, topography. Topography includes your ground contours, trees, streams. A raised ground like a hilltop is usually considered to be an ideal site of an airport. Why? The reasons are, because if the airport is a hilltop, see, you see these points, less obstruction in approach zones and turning zones. When the airport is landing, then one approach zone is constructed. We'll see in the diagrams, or when you do the numericals also, you see what is approach zone, what is turning zone. So approach zone, if it is a very crowded place or in the city, the approach zone is restricted, but in hill zone there is no such restriction. So obstruction is very less. Then turning zones also, it is sufficient there. Then go to the next one, natural drainage. Low land may result in flooding. In a hilltop, there will be no flood, will never be there in a hilltop. So water will always subside. But if it is a low-lying area, there is always the fear of getting flooded. The land may always get flooded. So natural drainage is provided by your hilltop. Then next one, if in a city, then uneven winds may be there, but in as we go down, as we go up, the wind becomes more uniform, and as we go come down the hilltop, the air is not so uniform. So it is always preferable, the hilltop is always preferable because of this factor called uniform wind. And hilltop, one more factor, less fog is there. As we go up there is less fog, as we go down there is more fog. Let's go to the next one. Then obstructions. When aircraft is landing or taking off, it loses or gains altitude very slowly as compared to the forward speed. So what happens when the airports say this is a runway and aircraft is coming, so plane is coming here. So when it is touching the ground, this time is very during this time, the speed is very less. Up till here the speed is very less, and then when it is in the runway, it then comes to a halt. And again when an airplane will try to take off, then again during takeoff the speed is very less until it reaches the altitude, then it will go to a normal speed. So during this period, during landing and takeoff, the speed is very less. So for this reason, long clearance areas are provided on either side of the runway S, and which are known as approach area. So this area just before landing is called approach area. Before and after takeoff is the approach area. So sufficient approach area are required. So this area should be kept free from obstructions such as fences, trees, buildings and other man-made objects. So one more factor while selecting a site, you should make sure that nearby areas are free from all these obstructions, from trees, fences, buildings, man-made objects, as far as possible. Obviously in cities the obstructions will be there, but if to see as much as possible obstructions are avoided. And then visibility. Then you also have to take care of the visibility. So poor visibility lowers the traffic capacity of the airport. So site selected should be free from fog, smoke, haze. Fog generally settles in the area where wind blow is minimum. So in valley, and the wind blow is minimum and fog will be more there. And also nearby industrial sites, the fog and haze will be more there. So we try to avoid near industrial areas and valleys. We try to avoid there. Then let's go to the next one. Wind. A runway is so oriented that landing and takeoff is done by heading into the wind. That is wind. Wind data is required for this uh, this point. See, when we collect wind data, what we want to collect there? We want to collect the direction, the duration, intensity of wind. We want to check there, and this data should be for a minimum of 5 years. So at least for 5 years we want to know what was the direction of wind in that particular place, and for how much duration that particular velocity was there, what was the intensity of the wind during in that place for a minimum of 5 years. So if we know that one, then it will help in proper orientation of runway. So you see, if we select an airport site uh, or a runway along the direction of wind, it will help. For example, you want to take off. So take off, what we need, we want to move opposite the direction of wind, so that it will cause an accelerating effect. And when we come down, it again we have to move opposite to the direction of wind, because the wind will provide an braking force. And while takeoff, we want to move along the direction of wind. Then noise nuisance, very important factor, this one, noise nuisance. Noise means, nuisance means trouble. The site should be so selected that the landing and takeoff paths of the aircraft pass over the land which is free from residential and industrial development. So the site should be free from residential and industrial development. One very important part here. So some buffer zone may also be provided between the takeoff end of a runway and a nearby residential area. For example, this is a runway and this is a nearby residential area. This is a residential area. So it will just the aircraft will try to land in this manner. So this zone is known as a buffer zone. So some buffer zone is required for some extra safety. Okay, so sometimes it so happens that the area under the flight path which is oriented along the direction of prevailing winds, is highly developed with residences and industries. So just before this point, I thought what we learned before this point, that we always prefer the runway along the direction of wind. So this is the direction of wind. When we are taking off, the airplane moves along the direction of wind, so that the direction of wind will help it to move or to take off. Okay, and when it is coming down, again it is moving opposite to the direction of wind. Why? Because it will, the direction of wind, if it is opposite, it will provide a braking effect and it can come to a halt. So but sometimes the direction of wind will not be there, or due to some reasons we will not get the direction of wind. When we will not get, for example, if there is a residential, for example, this is the direction of prevailing wind or direction of wind, so naturally you will understand that the aircraft should move in this direction. Okay, but every time it may not be possible. Why? For example, here a very densely populated area is there, so in that case it may not be possible. Just let me rub it. Okay, let us say this is a direction of wind, this is a runway. Okay, and this is direction of wind. So the aircraft will come here and it will land. This is direction of wind. But sometimes this is not preferred. When it is not preferred, when this area, the nearby area outside of this airport zone, this area is densely very heavily populated, then the direction of wind will not be preferred. Okay, then when what we'll do, then we'll choose a runway which is perpendicular to this prevailing wind, to direction of prevailing wind. Okay, so direction of wind is this one, direction of prevailing wind. So but why we will not take this runway length, this direction of runway? Because this area is heavily populated. So what we'll do, we'll go for the other path, the perpendicular direction. And this here we see, here the area is not heavily populated, is lightly populated. Okay, so lightly populated here. So we'll choose this direction of runway because it is lightly populated. So in this case we'll prefer this runway which is perpendicular to direction of prevailing winds, and this runway we'll call it as preferential runway. Okay, so this point is what we explained. I'm trying to explain the second point. Sometimes it so happens that the area under the flight path which is oriented along the direction of winds, this path is highly developed with residences and industries. Here industries there or residences is there, so we cannot choose this one. So however, if runway is constructed at right angle to the direction of prevailing winds, so if I want to construct here this runway, if I want to construct, the area is found to be scarcely developed, then we'll see that here area is scarcely developed and this can be used as a runway. Okay, so if the wind intensity over the site is low for large percentage of time, it will be possible to use this direction of runway, and this direction of runway we call it as preferential runway for takeoff. This one, this is called preferential runway. Okay, preferential runway direction, and this is prevailing wind direction. Let's go to next one. So this one you see the same thing. So you see here this area is heavily populated. This area is heavily populated. We always want that the flight will go along the direction of wind only, in this direction of wind, but always it may not be possible. In this case it's not possible. Why? Because it is a very heavily populated. So what we want to do now, we want to construct a runway which is having less population. So for example this, and where we will calculate perpendicular to this prevailing wind, this direction, and this direction is known as preferential runway. So we'll stop here, and okay, then see you.